The following program contains adult language, poor taste in jokes, racial slurs, political slurs, slants, and all sorts of things that if you are sensitive and have a delicate constitution, you should probably go watch Teletubbies. You were warned.
Hey kids, welcome back to Roto Talk.
Hey kids, welcome back. Today we're gonna do something fun.
It's time.
And kind of pointless. So this is going to be a lesson in hydro dipping. How I got into this was originally back in the 90s. When I was a kid, if you're a guitar player, you'll understand this. When I was a kid, one of my favorite guitars was the Ibanez Universe Gem Swirl. The one that Steve Vai used in on The Audience is Listening. And I just love that guitar. And so one day I figured out how to make it. You know, I had a Ibanez RG guitar, and I took oil-based paint and floated it on the surface of a big trash can. So you buy a brand new 45-gallon trash drum, and you pour oil-based paint on it so it floats on the surface, and then you slowly dip the guitar through there, and it makes a swirl job. And it was very difficult to do. Years later, they came out with hydrofilm. And back in the quadcopter days and drones, when this channel used to be all about drones, I used to do a lot of hydro dipping. And I kind of got the bug the other day and thought, let's do it again. So I already did, just for fun, because I hadn't done it in a while, I did one of my video game controllers for my emulator system that I have networked in the house. Showed it to my guys in the group, and they kind of got a kick out of it. So I was like, all right, cool. So I'll just do a quick video on this. And this is going to be, if you notice my boats, I do a lot of themes, and just crazy stuff.
Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
It's kind of, if you're into that type of thing, it can be kind of fun to do some hydro dipping on your boat hardware. All right. So we're going to do turn fins, which are basically two-dimensional. So what we did with these turn fins, I just put some painter's tape on the back side, and then we're going to take this and poke it through that hole. Same thing with this one. And then what I'm going to do, after we do the hydro dip on these and we clear coat them, I'm going to bring this edge back. Just basically grind this down on a hone just so that edge doesn't have any paint or anything on it. The other thing we're going to do is a head, just for fun. Now, I painted these, roughly, with paint. One thing I've learned with hydro dip, don't use a high gloss paint for a base. You know, you can use primer or whatever you want. I use a satin. This is really good. This stuff in the girly looking can. Very good stuff for this. Use a satin or a flat. Don't use a high gloss because it's harder to do the dip. Okay? You do not have to make it perfect. Now, you can see I left this one not perfect. Just did a quick coat. There's a little bit of the black there. This is off as a Noah 26cc engine that I had laying around for years. And you can see that's not perfect either. The base coat of what you do does kind of determine how this thing looks. Okay? So like if you wanted this to be, you got to understand hydrofilm, what it is they take an ink and then they spray it with a PVC binding agent, and that's what holds the ink together. Then they roll it up and they send it to you, and it comes out looking like, hang on, this. Okay, so it's almost like a plastic film, but it's not plastic per se. It's PVC, which is, I guess, a form of plastic. And then we spray activator on it, the PVC dissipates, it melts away, and then it's just paint left over, which you'll see in a minute. But when you look at this stuff, let me show you the controller I did earlier. It's still drying. Now this is that same film I just showed you. Okay, you can see where the white's coming through, because most hydrofilm, this particular swirl hydrofilm, is not solid paint. It's swirled, so there's clear parts in it. Well, those clear parts are going to be white, or if you want those clear parts to be yellow, think about that before you do this. Now, So you don't need many things. You need the hydrofilm. I get mine 99.9% of the time off of eBay. Just type in hydro dipping film, and you'll have thousands and thousands of patterns, dollar signs, skulls, and half-naked chicks, comic books, neat swirl stuff, flames, all that stuff. And the other thing you need is activator. It does have a shake rattle in it. You don't need to use it. That's what dissolves the PVC. And then you have to have a bucket of water. I have hydro dipped entire boats before. It's not that hard. It's a little nerve-wracking when you're dealing with a big boat. Usually it's my riggers. Or I've hydro dipped canopies before, things like that. You just need a big enough basin. Do not do this in your house because it stinks to high heaven. That activator is tight. Your old lady kick you out fast. Don't do it. I did it in a hotel room once just because I was bored and I brought that stuff with me, and my hotel room just absolutely was awfully. It was funny. So you need something to dip it in. You need your hydrofilm, and you need your activator, and obviously something to do. Don't use bare metal or bare plastic even. Always put a primer in there, okay? So what you want to do now is you want a piece. I already cut the pieces for these two, okay? We're going to cut a piece that's large enough for this head. Does not have to be perfect. But you got to remember, though, it's got to stretch over like that. So, where's my knife? There it is. We'll just do it like we're going to have a little bit of waste. This stuff is not expensive. Usually you can get a good square yard for 20 bucks. Oh, there's my air compressor. Be right back. Saying 20 bucks or less usually. All right, so what you want, make sure you have no moisture on your surface here. All right, we're going to take some. This is this is a lot more dip than we need. That's okay. It's kind of an extra piece. So what I'm going to do, better too much than too little. I have done dips where I had barely enough to do it, and you had to angle the part just right to get it in there. But make sure your surface does not have any water on it. If you get a drop of water on the back of this, makes for a bad day. Okay. What it does is it screws up your dip. It doesn't get paint everywhere. It just screws up your dip. Okay. Now we're going to trim this down. The reason we're doing this with the tape is if I drop this hydrofilm in that water as is, what it'll do, once it absorbs the water and dissipates into what it's supposed to be, it'll just go all over the place. This actually creates a dam, or like a border. And now, if your dip piece is the same size as your bin that you're dipping it in, like this thing, you don't need this. But I've noticed, I always do it, no matter what. Especially if you guys ever want to do, they make a lot of hydrofilms that look like carbon fiber. If you ever want the carbon fiber look, tape it. Because what happens is it'll just stretch and blow out and it looks terrible. I've dipped boats in carbon fiber film before and it's tricky. Okay? So, after we get that done, we're going to move our camera over. Alright, so your water, you want to be, bathtub is perfect, bathtub temperature. Let me straighten this camera out a little bit. Oh well, good enough. Alright, bathtub style of water. Most hydrofilm will have a dull side and a shiny side. The shiny side goes down. Now, when you put it in the water, try to rest it right on the top, just like that. Okay? If you have air bubbles in there, you can take your finger. Now these air bubbles came out real easy, not worried about it, but I have had tiny little air bubbles and they get all over the place. You do not want water to come over this edge. Throw it away and start over. Don't even attempt it. Now what you'll see it doing, and that's why you saw me take, it naturally wanted to curve this way, so I dropped it in the water that way and just let it from the middle out. It's almost like you're applying a decal. That way you don't get tons of air under it. You can see now how it's wrinkling up. Now that's wrinkling up, there's an air bubble. Now, I don't care if it gets all the way out. As long as it's not in the area where I'm dipping, I don't care. Be careful getting your air bubbles out, because if you push too hard and water comes in, bad day at the zoo, starting over. But you see all those wrinkles? You want to let this sit in for at least a minute, 15 seconds. That's the warmer the water, the least amount of time you have to do it. Even with 80-degree bathtub water or something like that, I would definitely let it sit for a minute and a half. You're not going to let it sit too long usually. You can if you don't let it absorb enough water, once you spray it, it's still filmy, and it just doesn't do a good job at all. So once all the wrinkles go away, you can see my water starting to creep. I better hurry. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to now, I'm going to put on a rubber glove just because I hate getting this shit on my hands. We're going to spray, not a ton. Okay, just like that. Now, when you're using something with a surface like this, you want to try to roll it. Go nice and slow. There we go. Not bad. All right. Now, the next trick we're going to do, we're going to take this out. The head I'm probably just throwing away. I'm not actually going to use it. Next thing we want to do, see, you got some of the schmutz in there? Going to go like this. Paper towel works really well for this. Just do that. And it gets that schmutz off the side. Okay. Now we're going to do one of our fins. I'm going to try not to take off my glove. Just like that. See, I got water creeping in there. This might not work on this one. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to let that curl up. Now, if water does creep in the edges and gets on this side, that's okay as long as it's not in the dipping area. See, that's a mistake. I don't like that. But we're just going to let this sit for a second. We'll see what happens. Alright, so the thing you want to think about is how are you going to grip this stuff when you're putting it in. Since I'm probably taking this edge down to chrome again, I'm just going to grip this like that. We're going to spray. I usually like to let the spray float down. I shouldn't have done it that hard, but it's okay. Now with a two-dimensional piece, I'm going to go like this. You don't want to trap air. Shake it off. There you go. Looks good. All right. That little bit there. Yeah, that's nice. All right. So I'm going to take this back out. Just use this same old rag. Again, paper towel's a cheaper way, but I had this laying around. This saves you from changing your water every 5 minutes. Now, this water isn't super warm. I'm going to say this water is probably only 68. And I'm not loving how that's working out. And this piece of tape came off. The other thing you want to try to do is when you tape these, try not to have it bunched up. Like what I mean by that is you want it nice and perfectly flat. If you have a little bit of a hump in there when you tape it, you make that tape frame and you have a little bit of a hump, what's going to happen is when it's going to be like kind of like a hill, and when it absorbs the water, it's going to fold over itself and give you a long, runny, nasty looking thing. Now you can see I got some white schmutz over here. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to try to avoid that during the dip. I'm going to dip it right there. Even though this is a two-dimensional part, you don't want to go flat down. You want to give it a little bit of an angle to let it doesn't have to be as extreme as I did that last one. But what you want to do is make it so the air has a way to escape, because that air pocket underneath. This method, where the more geometric the part is, like a strut or a stinger off the back of a boat, or if you had a really funky shaped canopy you wanted to dip for a boat, that's where it gets tricky and hard. There's another thing, while I'm letting this soak up, this water should be warmer. Like I said, make it at least bathtub water. And before, when I did the game controller, I used one of my heaters. I have a water heater that I just stick in there and it heated it up real good. Or you can just get it out of the house and not be lazy like that. The other thing with hydro dipping that they tell you to do is to rinse them right after you dip them. Okay? I don't do that. I let mine sit and really set up for like 20 minutes. Then I rinse them under cool water lightly. Like if you have a garden hose, and just spray it on the fine mist and keep spraying it till the slime, there's a slime that comes off. That slime's that PVC crap. You want to get that off. I have experimented with this in the past and let it completely dry overnight, and you can still rinse it off, the slimy part. But I've noticed that, especially if you use a high gloss base coat and the hydro dip hasn't had a real good chance to really set, I have had perfect dips where I go to rinse it and it fucks it up. That's no fun. Then you have to strip it, and it's a real pain in the ass. So like my game controller over there, that thing's been soaking or sitting for 2 or 3 hours, and I'll take it into the house. It won't stink as bad, or I'll take it out in the garage and I'll just spray it down until you want to get that off, because before you clear coat it, because it'll look nasty. You don't want to do that. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold the camera away. We're going to let it float down. Now, you pretty much can't let this stuff soak in the water too long. At least I have never had a problem with that. It's not like you're under a time crunch. Like, oh my god, JJ said I had to get this done in a minute and blah, blah, blah. No. Okay. So, same principle. Now again, two-dimensional part, shoot, that's easy. Try to not pull it back through the paint. Yeah, nice. Let that set up. Oh, I got some schmutz on the head already. So there's our head we did, head cap. Turned out nice. Okay. And that's really about it. I mean, so now what I would do, I would let these sit at least half an hour. Now, that's the other kick in the head. Don't rush this process. The base coat that you paint on your parts, make sure it cures well. The primer that you use, because this stuff eats it off. I've had that in the past where I've rushed it, and I wanted to get a part hydro dipped and get it done real fast. And I sprayed this on, and as soon as I put it in, the primer just starts oozing. Okay? That's not good. Make sure your primer is set. There is no specific. I've used Rust-Oleum, which is what I prefer. I don't like Krylon. I use Rust-Oleum for about everything with that stuff. Then, after we rinse it off, I use automotive clear coat, just like everything else. Okay? So I will be doing an automotive clear on the game controller. Now you can see the texture, maybe, where the grips are there. Looks real good. Alright? You can't ask for much better than that. But you can do, like I said, if you want to do the rudder, things like that, don't do the leading edge, because you're just going to have to sand it down anyway. You don't want a big paint. You want that leading edge of that rudder nice and sharp. Same thing with those turn fins. After I get those turn fins coated, I'm going to grind it off and make it so it's a nice naked edge again. The head, don't put this on your pipe. The head will be okay, the head jacket, because it gets warm, but if it gets above 200 degrees, you got bigger problems anyway. But clear coat with that, with 200 degrees-ish, it'll be fine. But you put it on an 800-degree pipe, it's going to burn off, obviously, in about 30 seconds. If you can dip an entire boat, more power to you. But, again, the geometry of the part that you're doing, I did two very easy parts. The head was harder than the fins, obviously. Fins are two-dimensional. But you can hydro dip anything within reason. But it does get tricky. Like, this is a really shallow pool. It's very hard to do a big part in this, right? I've only got 3 inches of depth in here. So if I was doing something bigger, I'd be using a bucket, or worst case, I could empty out my parts washer tank over there, which gives you a good 3 feet by 2 feet, and I could fill up with fresh water, put my heaters on for a day. Or if you wanted to dip an entire boat, like say our SS monohull that we did, that's a good one to do, because if you had a box, like I've used those storage bins you get at Walmart or Meijer or Target, wherever, those big ones chicks use for clothes and stuff, slide under your bed. They're only about that deep, but they're real wide this way, and they're like 5 feet long. Those are killer. They're only like $10. Fill those up, and then lay your film down, do the tape border, lay your film out, and then prep it, flip your boat upside down, tape off the boat. So just like as if you were going to be painting it, tape it off so it's only going to hydro dip the top if that's all you want. You flip the boat upside down, and then just put it in like that, pull it out. It's nerve-wracking. It really is, because if you screw it up, it's like, unless you want to strategically locate some decals like I usually do. If you do screw it up, let it sit and then sand it off. Don't even attempt to wipe it off. It's just let it dry, sand it, do it again. It is scary. I've done boats. Canopies are tough, but like the mono, the Super Sport windshield, we could have done that. That would have been really cool. So again, that's really about it. We turned out pretty nice. I like the swirl. It's very cool. So, yeah, not disappointed in that. Okay. Again, be careful in the rinse process. I'm not going to show you that just because I'm too lazy to get the hat cam on. But gentle water. All you want is that just... I've done it where I've taken a hose in the yard and just aimed it up in the air, and it just has a nice shower coming down. And you just let it run like that for 10 minutes so it gets all that slime off. I don't rub it or anything. You could even use this water and just kind of shake it off a little bit too. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, let me know. This is the activator I use. It's all the same shit. Southern Hydrographics. It's where I order most of my, there's the address, but I ordered off eBay. $20 a can. Can last forever and a day. Don't overdo that spray. You don't need a ton of it. Okay? Make sure you let it sit. Be safe, kids. Get your water 80 degrees or so, like you take a bath in it. Let it sit for 2 minutes. The film in there until it's perfectly smooth, and shoot it, and then dump her in. And if you can even wait a little bit after you shoot it too. You don't have to do it. I did it pretty quick. You might even want to wait 30 seconds after that too. But don't overthink it. It's just hydro dipping. It's just paint. Okay? So anyway, kids, till next time. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.